some of the strongest people I know come and sit in that chair right there, close the door and say, I got to talk about something, and break down and cry. And so, we learned how to cry, and we learned how to hug each other. We learned how to be concerned about each other's circumstance.
You start really realizing what's important. It's to do a job well. It's to love your family, love your kids. This has been, and I used a phrase in one of our editorials, this was our 9/11. And you go through something like that, and I see one of my best friends in all the world lose everything he has. I see people that I care about out here living in FEMA trailers that I work with every day. I see one of our reporters lose a home that she grew up in and then have damage to her own house, the first house she ever owned.
As the strength of the staffs grew, so did their resolve to help tell the biggest story anyone had ever covered. But not only covered, newspapers began to lead. Newspapers strengthened their voices and opinions and became what newspapers in theory should become, the voice and conscience of a community. Editorial pages grew muscles and made their way to the front pages. And at times, editorials pounded a figurative fist on the table, demanding to be heard. At stake, first survival, and then the future of the coast.
On the third day, when our headline said, "Help us now," and, 200-point type, we were trying to express what people here were feeling and what we were feeling for them, which is that we got people that don't have anything, that are thirsty and need food, that don't have basic human services, and the government of the United States of America needs to get their butts down here and do something about this. That's what we're trying to say. And when, we've talked about the paper speaking for somebody. That sounds like a pretty brash statement, but you really begin to understand that the paper, maybe it's something that's insinuated to us by a First Amendment or something like that, but that in moments like this, you really begin to understand why we're all in this together. The paper may be owned by Knight Ridder, but the people that produce the journalism, that circulate the paper, that put it on the printing presses are out there living in the same circumstance that everybody is, so we're in it together.
Hurricane Katrina brought death, destruction, chaos, confusion, fear, and the unknown. And the Coast's 5 newspapers did their best to cover those storylines. One of the biggest and most important stories to come out of Katrina was how Gulf Coast residents responded to the madness. Movie scripts pale in comparison to some of these stories.
We ran a picture of a sunset, New Year's Eve. And we did it on New Year's Eve because we planned it that way. It was just the most gorgeous sunset you ever saw, and it had this palm tree that would still you could tell it had just been beaten to death by the wind, and it was just like there was hardly anything to it. But you appreciate those things, and just the human spirit.
Although Mississippi took the brunt of Katrina's physical destruction, most of the nation's media attention focused on New Orleans. A story ignored for the most part was the resolve of the coastal Mississippians. Those residents, and even their politicians, did what Sun-Herald editor Stan Tyner described as hitching up their britches and getting after the work at hand. The daily grind of recovery, one brick at a time.
We're pretty dang tough people. So when the storm came and knocked the heck out of us, we got up off our butts pretty quick and started doing what we could. We didn't whine much about how bad things were.
We've had a lady from the LA Times in here a couple months ago, and she said, she's covered the whole area. She's covered New Orleans a lot. She's been over here, and she says, I just love being over here. It's the people, you look all around you, and there's just destruction everywhere. And yet people, they don't talk about it. They get mad every once in a while, but they don't dwell on it like they do over here. They say, well, we're just going to pick ourselves up, and we're going to get back on our feet, and things will get better. It might take a while, but you see that everywhere you go. For every bad story and every just devastating thing you hear 10 more stories of hope.
The people here have come together. They've helped each other, and that's, a sense of community has never gone away, and it never will go away.
There are thousands of unheralded hero stories, stories of courage, sacrifice, and selflessness. These people do the not-so-small things that make recovery and rebuilding possible.
Good morning.
A good example is Dana Black, who is a carrier for the Sun-Herald. Black has worked without a single day off since the hurricane, delivering newspapers to the hardest-hit areas of the coast. She starts her workday at 2 in the morning. She delivers her first route, which is mostly north of Interstate 10 in Harrison County, and makes it home in time to get her husband and kids fed, then off to work and school. Then it's back to work delivering papers to her hometown of Long Beach, and then drives to Bay St. Louis to finish up her route. Logging 150 drive miles each day, Dana Black knows the destruction on the coast as well as anyone. She knows many of her customers by name and usually knows about their personal rebuilding efforts, including the status of FEMA, insurance, building permits, and building spec matters. Along with the Sun-Herald morning paper, Dana Black delivers hope.
The 1st of December, I printed Christmas cards up on my computer and printed actually 800 of them and put them. It took me 3 days, but I put them in the newspaper. Everybody's newspaper. They got a paper, and it just said, Merry Christmas. I forgot what the inside of it said, but it was telling everybody that no matter what the disaster, we will have a Christmas.
Journalism has a rap of focusing on the negative, and maybe that's right. But despite the obvious and not so obvious daily hardships they faced day after day, many of the coast newspaper people will tell you they're optimistic. Cautiously optimistic.
The opportunities out there. I think we're all on the edge of just this whole area booming, like everyone's saying, and I don't think it's going to take the 5 to 10 years. I think in 3 years this place is going to be unreal.
The only way to recover from this disaster is one family, one house, one home at a time. It'll be back, it'll be back. It won't be back like it is, but it'll be back.
Randy Ponder's helping lead his community. His was the first business back up and running in downtown Bay St. Louis. Rebuilding was a gamble. Newspapers on the coast will continue to face serious problems, finding employees, dealing with employee burnout, dealing with a fractured advertising base, particularly in Hancock County, and circulation numbers, to name just a few. But the story of Katrina is in its infancy. Recovery and reconstruction will fill the pages of newspapers for years to come. Decisions made by governments, businesses, and citizens today will impact the Mississippi coast for decades. Katrina is and will remain the biggest Mississippi news story for the foreseeable future. This story is not going away. Never has Mississippi journalism been so tested or so tough to do. And as difficult as it is to imagine, the challenge of producing solid and important stories will only grow in difficulty and complexity. Most stories have an ending, but there is none in sight for this one. And the Mississippi Coast newspapers, if they are to accomplish their mission to serve their readers, must continue to do what they have done since August 29th, 2005. Press on.